Have you ever walked away from someone who kept pulling away from you, only to wonder if they'd even notice you were gone? If you've been in a relationship with an avoidantly attached partner, you know that confusing dynamic all too well. The closeness that never quite sticks, the warmth that turns cold without warning, and the constant emotional chasing that leaves you feeling like you're the only one trying. And yet, when you finally get the strength to walk away, there's still that lingering question: will they even care? Will they ever realize what they lost? The truth is, avoidants often don't register the weight of your absence until long after you've gone quiet. But when that moment hits, when they suddenly feel the shift and recognize that you're not waiting around anymore, something changes. In this video, we're going to unpack exactly what happens when an avoidant finally realizes they've lost you. What goes through their mind? Why does it often hit them later, not right away? And how can you respond from a place of strength rather than slipping back into old patterns of self-abandonment just because they suddenly resurface? I'm Jim Rohn, and I help people who've been stuck in emotionally lopsided relationships stop chasing crumbs and start choosing secure, mutual, lasting connection. If you've been caught in a cycle of longing, overgiving, or walking on eggshells, this video is your turning point. You're not crazy. Your needs aren't too much. You've just been trying to get closeness from someone who fears it. So if you're ready to stop waiting for potential and start honoring your worth, hit that subscribe button right now. Around here, we don't beg for attention, we build it. Self-respect. We don't chase, we choose. And we don't just talk healing, we live it. Let's dive in. In the beginning, it often looks like the avoidant ex has it all together. They're calm, detached, maybe even acting like they're better off. You're left wondering how they could move on so fast. Did the relationship mean nothing to them? But what you're seeing isn't strength or clarity. It's emotional avoidance in real time. For someone with an avoidant attachment style, the end of a relationship can feel like relief, not because they didn't care, but because they've spent the entire connection feeling overwhelmed by closeness. Where you saw intimacy, they felt pressure. Where you asked for connection, they registered threat, not consciously, but viscerally. And so when the relationship ends, they convince themselves it was the right choice. They mentally check out and avoid the uncomfortable emotions they were never taught how to process. I'm fine, they say. This is better. I need space. But here's what they don't realize, and this is the piece that always catches them off guard. Avoidant detachment is temporary. It's a defense mechanism, not a permanent solution. Because while they're numbing your processing, you're growing, you're learning how to let go even if it hurts, and most importantly, you stop chasing. You stop explaining, you stop overfunctioning to keep the connection alive. And that is when the dynamic starts to shift. At first, they don't notice, they feel in control. But over time, something changes. The absence of your energy, your warmth, your emotional availability, it's not just quiet, it's empty. And avoidants aren't immune to emotional loss, they're just delayed in feeling it. One random day, without warning, it all starts to hit. A memory, a scent, a photo, something simple triggers what they worked so hard to avoid: missing you. And it's not just nostalgia, it's regret. It's the realization that their emotional shutdown didn't protect them, it cost them something real. That's the brick wall moment, the one they didn't expect. And when it hits hard. They might test the waters with a message, a reaction to your story, a just thinking of you text. But the real question isn't will they come back? It's who will you be when they do? Because when you've been healing, grounding, and choosing your self-worth over breadcrumbs, you don't just go back to someone who took you for granted. You know what consistency feels like now. You know what mutual energy looks like. And unless they've done real work on themselves, not just missed your presence, but developed the capacity to show up emotionally, they're not coming back to you. They're coming back to the comfort you gave them. So ask yourself, if they finally realize what they lost, will they still deserve access to it? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Have you seen this happen? Did they return when you truly stopped waiting, or did you realize by then you were already too far ahead? Hit that subscribe if you're choosing growth over confusion, and let's keep building the kind of love that doesn't run from connection. It rises to meet it. What really starts to shift things, often without you even realizing it, is when you're no longer emotionally accessible to them. And ironically, that's the moment you become emotionally safe for them to start missing. Now, I get it. This doesn't seem to make any rational sense, especially if you're not wired the way they are. But for someone with an avoidant attachment style, closeness can feel threatening. Emotional vulnerability, whether it's you expressing your needs, wanting to talk through something, or just trying to deepen the relationship, can trigger a flood of discomfort inside them. It's not that they don't care, it's that they were conditioned to associate intimacy with overwhelm or even emotional danger. So while you were offering connection, they were interpreting it as pressure. That's why when you were still showing up, still trying to talk, still reaching out, still hoping, they couldn't feel your value clearly. To them, your presence meant the emotional intensity was still alive, and that's what their system was trying to avoid. But the moment you pull back, not out of strategy but out of self-respect, the landscape shifts. Suddenly, they're no longer feeling cornered. They're not being asked to feel or engage in a way they've been running from, and when that pressure disappears, the avoidant part of them quiets down, their nervous system settles, and for the first time they're able to look back at you without that instinctive recoil. That's when the feelings they buried start to bubble up. Memories, emotions, regrets, it all starts creeping in. And what's fascinating is that the very thing that once triggered them, your emotional availability, is now gone, and now that they can't access it, they want it. Not because they're ready to do the work necessarily, but because your distance makes them feel safe enough to finally feel their own longing. And that's the psychological twist most people don't see coming. This is why your silence speaks louder than words. This is why disengaging from the dynamic doesn't just protect your peace, it changes the equation entirely. But here's the part you have to remember. Just because they start to miss you doesn't mean they're ready to meet you where you are now. And this is where your growth becomes everything. Because you're not just waiting to be wanted, you're becoming someone who doesn't need to be re-chosen by someone who couldn't hold you the first time. And that is powerful. Tell me in the comments, have you seen this switch happen, where your absence finally pulled their emotions to the surface? And if they reached out, did they come back changed or just chasing comfort? Let's talk about it below. And if you're done playing emotional hide and seek, hit that subscribe. We're not here to be decoded, we're here to be chosen. Here's where everything starts to flip, and they don't see it coming. Up until now, the avoidant has felt pretty confident in the dynamic. Not necessarily smug, but settled, comfortable. Because for a long time, on some level, they believed you'd always be there. Why wouldn't they? You showed up. You waited. You tried. You forgave the emotional distance, gave them space, kept the door open even when it hurt. You were the glue, holding things together. And while they may have struggled with closeness, they also came to rely on your consistency. So when you finally shift out of that role, not in a dramatic way, but in a quiet, decisive, self-respecting way, something happens internally that they haven't prepared for. There's this subtle panic, not necessarily a loud one, more like a creeping realization. Wait, you're not there anymore. They might check your social media, wonder why you haven't reached out, feel confused when they don't feel your emotional presence in the background like they used to. And what really unnerves them isn't just the silence, it's the fact that you're okay without them. That maybe, just maybe, you've moved on. This is when the power dynamic quietly begins to reverse, because for the first time, they're not the one doing the withdrawing. You are, not as a tactic, but as a natural result of healing. You're no longer waiting for them to change. You're no longer proving your worth. And here's the twist most avoidants never expect. The moment you stop orbiting their emotional world, they finally start to feel the cost of their detachment. And it hits differently, because now, the story they told themselves, the one where they were in control, the one where emotional distance kept them safe, starts to fall apart. They realize that their attachment style didn't protect the relationship. It destroyed the one thing they actually needed: connection. And when that truth lands, it's sobering. It's not just about missing you anymore. It's about seeing clearly that they played a part in pushing away the very intimacy they craved but didn't know how to handle. And that is the turning point. That's when the avoidant finally sees the pattern, not just the person they lost. And that's when, for the first time, they may feel something new: regret, not just longing. Have you felt this shift before? Have they come back around when you finally stopped waiting? I want to hear your story in the comments, because this is where the real conversation begins. And if you're done living in emotional limbo and ready to reclaim your power, hit that subscribe button. Around here, we don't chase clarity, we embody it. Something strange starts to happen when the avoidant finally slows down and sits with the silence you've left behind. Their mind begins to play scenes, not just memories, but imagined versions of what could have been. It's almost like a movie reel spinning in their head. Suddenly, they're seeing the best parts of you, the moments of joy, the stability you offered, the safety they never quite knew how to hold. But this isn't just reflection. It's a fantasy forming, one where the relationship finally works, because now, without the emotional weight of real-time closeness pressing on them, they can idealize it. And in that mental space, the version of you they once took for granted becomes a kind of emotional anchor. It's not reality, it's projection, but to them it feels real. And that's when panic begins to creep in, because in those vivid daydreams of what the two of you could have had, they also start realizing they were the one who stood in the way of it. They don't always name it as avoidant attachment, most don't. But there's a deep inner knowing that something in them blocked connection, and now that it's gone, they want it back, desperately. But here's the twist. They also fear it. And that's the emotional loop they now have to wrestle with. Meanwhile, you might be thriving, healing, moving forward, and that reality only adds pressure to their internal storm. So the real question becomes, will they break the cycle or just romanticize what they lost? Comment below if you've ever felt someone try to come back once you were finally free. And if you're done being someone's wake-up call, hit subscribe. We're moving toward real grounded love here. Not fantasy, not almosts. The real thing. And then comes the moment they never saw coming, the moment the cost of being avoidant finally hits them on an emotional level. For the first time, they're not just uncomfortable, they're actually confronted with the truth. Not just about this relationship, but about a pattern that's been quietly sabotaging every connection they've ever tried to build. All the things they once framed as reasonable, needing space, not being ready, not wanting pressure, suddenly don't sound so noble anymore. They start to realize that these weren't healthy boundaries. They were just protective walls. And the heartbreak is, they begin to see that while you were doing the emotional heavy lifting, being patient, trying to meet them where they were, giving space while still offering closeness, they just kept pulling further away. Not because you weren't enough, but because their fear of intimacy was louder than their desire for connection. And here's where regret begins to sink in. Because now they're not just missing you, they're questioning everything they told themselves about why they left. The old narrative doesn't hold anymore. And that's often when you'll hear from them again. A text, a late night hey, that sounds casual but carries a weight you can feel. They're not just reaching out to you. They're reaching for a version of themselves they lost in the process. And that's where it gets complicated, because by now there's a good chance you've grown. You've stopped waiting, you've stopped chasing potential, and you've started choosing peace over promises. Which means the question becomes, do you want to reopen a door you finally had the courage to close? Drop a comment if you've ever felt torn when someone circled back just as you were finding your strength. And if you're done living on emotional hold, hit that subscribe. We don't wait for people to wake up. We choose love that chooses us back. At the end of the day, this journey isn't just about whether an avoidant ex wakes up and realizes what they lost. It's about you waking up to what you deserve. You've seen now how avoidant patterns can cloud connection, delay accountability, and make love feel like a moving target. But you also know something deeper, that real intimacy doesn't require chasing, fixing, or shrinking yourself to keep someone comfortable. It asks for mutual effort, emotional presence, and the courage to grow together. So whether your avoidant ex reaches out or not, the power is in your hands now. You're not the same person who once waited on clarity. You've done the work. You've learned to see red flags for what they are, and more importantly, you've learned to trust yourself. Thank you for watching and giving yourself this space to reflect, grow, and reclaim your worth. If this video resonated with you, go ahead and hit subscribe so you don't miss more content to support your healing and self-empowerment. And I'd really love to hear your thoughts. Have you experienced this kind of shift with someone who pulled away only to come back when you were already letting go? Drop your story in the comments below. Your insight might be the exact thing someone else needs to hear today. Keep choosing your peace. Keep choosing you. I'll see you in the next one.